Hello, I'm Narendra, and today I'm going to talk about the ritual of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is not unique to Hinduism, it's there in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. It's there, it's everywhere. Like, that the city of Jerusalem is sacred for the Jews, the Christians, as well as the Muslims. And the Vatican City is sacred for the Christians. Then Mecca is sacred for the Muslims. Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, Kailash is sacred for the Buddhists, and Kailash and Mansarovar are sacred for the Hindus also. So it's nothing unique for to Hinduism, and pilgrimage has also been celebrated in literature. There's this Canterbury Tales in the medieval age by Geoffrey Chaucer, where a group of pilgrims, Christian pilgrims, they are going to the Canterbury Cathedral in Kent, in England, and on the way, what happens and the various adventures that they go through, they tell each other stories. All that is in Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, which is considered to be a literary classic. Then we have Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, where the protagonist of the book, the Christian, his name is Christian. He performs his journey from the city of destruction to the celestial city. The whole thing is an allegory, where the spiritual journey has been told in symbolical language. Then in Sufism, we have Fariduddin Attar's Conference of the Birds, where a group of birds, they are crossing 7 valleys to reach a place of peace and bliss and beatitude. And those 7 valleys are basically the stages of the spiritual growth and evolution. So pilgrimage has been celebrated in literature also. And whenever we talk about pilgrimage, we should not take the last 100 years into consideration, because something happened in the last 100 years which has totally altered the nature of pilgrimage, and that is the advent of modern transport. Now people are traveling by car, by trains, by air to reach their destinations, and the very concept of pilgrimage has it has got diluted, because in the olden days, before 100 years, for centuries, people performed pilgrimage on foot. They used to walk to the place of the pilgrimage. That was how it was for centuries. If you take India, nowadays you find this Char Dham Yatra, conducted tours by the travel agencies, where in one stroke you cover Gangotri and Jamunotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath in one stroke. Killing 4 birds with one stone. But that was not the idea in the earlier days. It used to take months, even years, to cover. If you were talking about four of these Char Dhams, it could take more than a year. People used to travel on foot for months. They used to stay in the wayside inns and again travel the next day. Yes, some primary kind of transport like bullock carts and horse-driven carriages were used, but they were only for the mentally, physically those who were infirm or old. It was meant for them. The young and able-bodied people were expected to walk. The hardship itself was a part of the pilgrimage. And in India, you see, even the pilgrimage spots, they were in hard and difficult places like Kamakhya, Gangotri, Jamunotri, Kedarnath, Sabrimala. So all these places, were difficult to access. And even when the pilgrimage centers were located on the plains, like in Puri or Dwarka or Rameshwaram. It used to take months to reach those places through by foot. So that was what it was. The paths were difficult, and throughout this journey, for months, people were oriented towards one goal, and that was having a darshan, having paying one's obeisance to the deity. That was the one thing that motivated people for such long durations of time. So, after all these difficulties, ultimately they reached the shrine of the divine, and that was the darshan of the deity, and that was the objective. And the process that was involved was, once they reached the shrine, they used to do pradakshina. That is again another ritual. I would request you to watch my video on pradakshina, where I have explained the process. They used to do pradakshina, and they used to do Shashtanga Pranam, where they used to lie on the ground with all six body parts touching the ground, which showed humility. And after obtaining darshan, they used to receive prasad from the temple, from the priests of the temple. That was the procedure. Now, this whole thing, this long, arduous journey for months, finally reaching the shrine, doing pradakshina, obtaining darshan, obtaining prasad, all these are actually a mirror image of an inner process that was happening. These activities were a mirror image of an inner process. That is what the ritualism of pilgrimage is all about. Now we are going into the symbolic meaning of pilgrimage. This long, arduous journey, what did it signify? It signified that reaching the shrine of the divine or spiritual realization required years of sadhana, years of dedication. Spiritual evolution is a long and difficult journey. So that is what the long journey in the outer dimension, that is what it represented. So one had to be single-minded during that long and difficult journey. Sadhana is a long process. Purification is a long process, inner purification. So that is what it meant. You had to be away from family and friends. It was not an outing with the family. You were supposed to travel alone, taking your family, children, friends, and relatives. That was not the idea of pilgrimage. One was supposed to travel alone. And again, spiritually, that is, each person has his own path which he has to travel alone. It cannot be performed in thick company. Sadhana is an inward journey, and hence other cannot accompany you there. That is the meaning of traveling alone, away from family and friends. Then after reaching the shrine, pradakshina. The central idea of pradakshina is, Lord, you are the center of my life. In all the activities of our lives, we are the center. Things are happening around us. But when we reach the shrine of the divine, we place Lord in the center and we circumambulate the Lord. We go around in circles. The Lord becomes the center. We shift the focus from us to the deity of the temple. That is the idea of pradakshina. And Shashtanga Pranam is total submission of the physical body, which in a sense shows total humility and surrender. And there is one more interesting thing that we do when we go on a pilgrimage. We take a coconut with us, and the priest breaks the coconut and he offers it to the deity. Coconut symbolically represents the human head, and human head is the seat of the ego. Without the head, there's no identity. Your torso has no identity. Nobody can identify you by seeing a torso only. The head gives the identity. So basically, offering the coconut is a symbol that you have offered your ego to the Lord or the Devi of the temple. It's a sign of surrender. Symbolically, the human head, symbolically, the ego. That is what the offering of the coconut means. And obtaining darshan of the divine, that means you see the divine in the sense, in the inner sense, it means spiritual realization, where you experience the divine. That is the physical act of darshan. In the outer world, in the outer realm, it's the physical act of darshan. You see the deity after that long journey of months of travel, maybe years also. You finally reach the shrine and you watch the deity darshan. In the inner realm, it is years of sadhana and hardship and struggle against one's own lower nature, and finally achieving the experience of the divine darshan. That is what it means, the ritual of darshan. And then the priest offers us prasad, what we get from the divine, or sweet or whatever. That is, you can call it in the spirit, in the symbolic sense, it is peace, beatitude, bliss, divine bliss that comes to us when we have our darshan, when we experience the divine. What happens? We become peaceful, we become blissful, and that is the prasad. That is the meaning of prasad, what we receive from the divine. So this pradakshina, I talked about pradakshina. Pradakshina, when it is done again around a geographical, structure, like a mountain or something. They do Kailash parikrama, they do parikrama of the Narmada river. So that is parikrama. When you do circumambulation around the temple, it is pradakshina, and when you do it around a geographical structure like Mount Kailash or Narmada river, then it is parikrama. That is the difference. And nowadays you see pilgrimage has become a kind of sightseeing. You just take a flight and land somewhere, and in 1 hour you get a darshan. You even have VIP darshans nowadays. You pay some extra money and you immediately are taken inside the shrine. That whole thing, that idea that you reach the shrine after a long, arduous journey and you get the darshan of the divine and you obtain that, whole thing is diluted now. But as long as we remember what the ritual signifies, when we visit a temple, when we go for a pilgrimage, as long as we remember that, that would still carry some value. And nowadays you see roads, motorable roads, even helicopters are being used to reach Kedarnath nowadays. Anyway, that's how things are. And till we reach, till we experience the divine in our own lives, this whole life remains a pilgrimage. That is what Sri Aurobindo says. He says that life itself is a pilgrimage, with birth and death as mere milestones if we have not reached the shrine of the divine. That is what this whole life would amount to. Birth and death would remain as milestones. And that is why our scriptures say, Charaiviti, Charaiviti, keep moving, keep moving. So pilgrimage is this, a journey that we perform to experience the divine. Thank you very much.